So last week, a couple of things happened that kind of threw the NHL upside down. And one was a little bit minor, the other one was obviously massive. And that was offer sheets. And so on July 1st, when it was free agency day, the New Jersey Devils threw out an offer sheet to Barry Hayton for 1 year. And Utah has until this Wednesday to see if they want to match it or not. And then on Friday, we of course saw the big blockbuster that's got everybody talking, which is the Flyers offering Leo Carlsson an offer sheet. Now, this seems like big news, but really it's exciting news as a fan. Obviously, if you're cheering for those teams who could lose a player, that obviously is going to suck and really piss you off, perhaps. But what I don't get is why this was not done sooner. And, the landscape's already changed with these offer sheets. And it should change. And that's the thing about this whole offer sheet thing I've never gotten for years and years. When it's a tool that's in the CBA and it's a way to improve your team, why not use it? And I get it. There's, different factors. You don't want to give up all that draft capital. And also on top of that, you have to overpay because the thing is to get a restricted free agent, it's two things. Number one, he's going to want to have to sign with your team. So it's not as simple as just presenting an offer sheet. If the player does not want to come to your team, he's not going to come. However, the other thing is you want to do the offer in such a way that the other team has a tough time matching it. So you get the player. And when you look at the RFA crops over the years, it's always the young up and coming players. And usually the way the NHL has been for years is they sign their 3-year entry level contract when they come into the league. After that, for the most part, they get a bridge deal, unless you're one of those very exceptional players that maybe get signed to a long-term contract. And after the bridge deal, if you prove yourself, you'll get a long-term deal, which will be the 8 years. And now we saw some of that change over the years where, for example, Toronto, where they signed Mitch Marner and, yeah, I guess even Nylander, and then, Austin Matthews to long-term deals right out of their entry-level deals. And I think the thing with that was a Toronto thing, but really the rest of the league for the most part, and again, there's exceptions to this rule, but for the most part, you're trying to lock up a guy long-term, and with an RFA, you get to at least hopefully buy some UFA years with your next contract. However, things are changing now because these old GMs that have been around forever, these old school GMs, who, by the way, people can say whatever they want about me in terms of my comment, and, you're somebody online that's just talking trash. Listen, probably 50% of the GMs in that league should not have a fucking job. Like, they're not good at their job. They have no qualifications, and the only thing is, because we played hockey, or they don't know jack about anything. So really, I can guarantee you there's GMs out there that really don't know much about what they need to do, really. Because, case in point, if you knew how to deal with this, you would be proactive. You would be on top of it. There are some GMs that I think are brilliant in terms of understanding what they need to do and how to do it. And once in a while, things are going to happen that are going to throw off, things for your team, and that's perhaps out of your control. For example, Jim Nill, I think, is a great GM for the Dallas Stars. Yes, he's riding a lot, I guess, goodwill perhaps from that one draft where he got Jason Robertson, Jake Ottinger, and Miro Heiskanen all in the same draft. You still have to hit on your draft picks. There's a lot of things that can go, right for your team. There's a lot of things that can go wrong for your team. But Neil has managed everything, and now with Jason Robertson, clearly there's a struggle there because Robertson is looking for whatever the heck he's looking for, because we don't know. He rejected that massive offer from Seattle. Does he want to stay in Dallas? He wants to be the highest paid player. Like, there's a lot more factors into that. But again, Jim Nill was proactive in at least trading Maverick Bork and getting some assets back, because the chances are Maverick Bork would have been offer sheeted at a lower amount, and then the compensation probably wouldn't have been as good. Now, do you think Nill wanted to trade Bork? No, he wanted to keep him. But you got to, obviously, when your team's a contender and they're competing, you got to be able to manage your cap space well. And there's moves that sometimes work out for you, and there's moves that don't. I get that. That's not going to be, that happens to every GM. Sometimes they'll hit on a free agent or a draft pick that's turned out to be better than they thought. Other times it's someone that's a bust. And then once in a while, a guy will get traded, or get released and signed somewhere else, and then their career blossoms, and then you're kind of like, oh, that guy was right there under our nose, and we just let him go. You can see it with some players where they're producing and they never get a chance, but sometimes a guy comes out of nowhere and starts producing elsewhere, and that happens, and that's fine. But the thing what I wanted to say with the offer sheet is that it's always a younger players where you're trying to get better. And why would you not use it? Because yes, you're giving up a lot of draft capital, but you're immensely improving your team in the immediate future where those draft picks might not matter much. So if you're a bottom five, team, or perhaps even a bottom 10, so if you're like, let's say, Vancouver or Chicago or Calgary, you have to have your own first round picks to make these offer sheets. It doesn't make sense for those teams to offer up their first round picks because they're still in the bottom half. Like, they're some of the more weaker teams in the league that you are going to be giving up more probably in draft capital than you should be. Yes, it could possibly be, let's say you're doing Mac Celebrini, then sure, maybe you want to. But if you're, for example, the Canucks, there's a good chance that you could be a top three, drafting team for the next 2-3 years. And just like San Jose, you could accumulate a lot of star players or young players that have the potential to be stars. So giving up picks doesn't make sense. Whereas, for example, what the Flyers did with Leo Carlsson, it makes a lot of sense because the Flyers made the playoffs. The Flyers were not expected to be a bottom five team for next year either. Now they're expected to get better. They have a glaring hole in their lineup, and that is a true number one center. Leo Carlsson is that. Yes, Leo Carlsson, there's a good chance he never lives up to the $18 million contract. There's a good chance. There's also an outside chance that he does shock everybody and lives up to that contract because he was a number 2 overall selection. He's shown a lot of growth over the last few years. And so those are the type of players you want to bank on. And for the Flyers, those picks will be mid-range anyways. And perhaps if they get Leo Carlsson, they can go further. It makes a lot of sense for the Flyers. They're one of those teams, if you're in the middle, you're not able to really, the only way you can rebuild nowadays is through the draft. And unless you're really crappy, chance of you getting a high-end pick is very low, obviously. Yes, again, I get it. There's a caveat that once in a while you might hit on a draft pick in the second round, third round, fourth round. I get that. And that happens. That happens to every team. There's always some players on a roster that have come out of nowhere, and I get that. But in the grand scheme of things, in terms of usual process, how it works, you need those top picks. The San Jose Sharks obviously lucked out this year getting the number 2 pick and taking Stenberg, but they've accumulated a lot of assets with Celebrini and Will Smith and Sam Dickinson. They even got Keaton Verhoeven this year's draft. They traded for a goalie in Yaroslav Askarov, so when you have some capital, you can make moves like that. They've built, through the draft, the Chicago Blackhawks, who still are behind the Sharks, mind you, but they have obviously their generational player in Connor Bedard. Then they still have Anton Frondel, who they got. Frank Nazar was a top 10 pick. They've got, Bowen Byram, I guess, isn't a good example. He's a top 5 pick, but they gave up a lot to get him, so let's leave that out of the equation. But what I'm saying is, you got to accumulate a lot of assets to compete. When you look at some of the teams, for example, the Florida Panthers, Barkov, Sam Reinhart, Aaron Ekblad were all, top 3 picks. Sam Bennett was 4th overall. Matthew Tkachuk was 6th overall. Brady Tkachuk was 4th overall. They're guys that are high-end picks. So eventually, I get it. Not every team's going to win the cup every year. That part we understand. However, you got to be able to set up your team to compete. And to do that, you got to think of different ways to be creative and make your team competitive. Because every team goes through a cycle, for the most part. There are some teams that are consistent and very good for a very long time, but eventually it's going to bottom out. And then, of course, there's those teams that are, just because of their ownership group, are stuck in the middle, that don't go anywhere for however many years. The Toronto Maple Leafs were a prime example of that when they had Matt Sundin back in the day. The Calgary Flames are probably still to this day a good example. This year is the first time the Flames have actually decided to rebuild after like 30 years. And they've been mediocre forever. Yes, they had Jerome McGinley, they had a couple of runs. The '04 Stanley Cup run is all they had. They never won. So things happen for different franchises, and you got to look at ways to improve. And so at this point, none of the top stars are getting to market. So free agency is not going to be what it once was. You're finding it hard to trade for a player because the ask is so astronomical usually, especially when it comes to, let's say, like a top pair right shot D, or obviously a center. Centers first or second line are hard to come by. Wingers are available plenty. Even goaltenders don't have the same, status that they used to. And who knows, some of this might change down the road. But I think the biggest thing is that if you're looking to improve your team with the salary cap going up, if you're a team that has a lot of cap space, you absolutely should go and sign an offer sheet. And it doesn't matter, you're improving your team to get that. If the Flyers can get Leo Carlsson, well, he's going to hit free agency when he's 26, so he's going to cash in again. Maybe at that point he doesn't sign with the Flyers. The Flyers could not maybe afford him. But for the next 5 years, maybe not next season, but the couple years after that, the Flyers can go from just trying to make the playoffs to perhaps a Stanley Cup contender if they keep building correctly, right? Like, again, there's not a perfect way to do this. Different teams do it different ways, and sometimes pieces work for you and sometimes they don't. But I think I understand the point of what the Flyers are doing. And I think other teams need to be proactive and understand that. And the other big thing is, like I said, some of these lazy managers, get up and start signing your players. The market is changing. You don't wait to nickel and dime your RFAs. This is perfect karma for the Ducks because Pat Verbeek has been a total asshole to his players. And, I get it. Players are playing, like, again, we're not going off the whole, the players are overpaid and they get millions of dollars to play a kid's game. We fucking get that. Let's just look at the market. It's millionaire players. It's billionaire owners. The owners have money. They have shitload of money. Players, if they can, get money, why not? And think about it. If you're an employee, which the players are, and your boss, is offering you or trying to, sign you to a contract, and he's trying to grind you, is kind of making a big deal about every dollar, and then a team comes around that's going to give you more, what you want and then some. Hell yeah, I'm signing the contract. No fucking guy is passing on the contract that Leo Carlsson signed. The whole league, every player would sign that contract if it was offered to them. Don't tell me you wouldn't, unless you're really loyal to some team because you grew up cheering for them when you were a kid. I don't know. Maybe John Tavares, if he was drafted by the Leafs when he was a kid and then got an offer, she wouldn't have signed. I don't know. Maybe there's exceptions. I mean, maybe players aren't going to sign in Winnipeg, but for the Flyers, they're still, they're still a big market. And so I think the biggest thing there is that if an opportunity presents itself and you have a chance to get an offer sheet, you will look at a lot of different factors, and some might not be of interest to you. But perhaps, there's some that worked and the situation works for you and you want to sign it. In Anaheim's case, Pat Verbeek has dicked around with the young guys for so long that it makes sense. Trevor Zegras, contract issues with him last time, ended up trading him. Jamie Drysdale, same thing. Cutter Gauthier, Jamie Drysdale was traded then for Cutter Gauthier, and then now even Mason McTavish last year. And now when you look at what's going on, Leo Carlsson signed, and if they decide to match that, that's eating up $18 million of your cap. Then they went and signed Pavel Mintyukov the other day because apparently there was a threat that someone said they were going to offer sheet him. So they overpaid to sign him. And I get it. It might not be an overpayment. Right now it probably is, where Verbeek probably didn't want to pay him that much. He's probably not worth $7 million, but that's the going rate for young defensemen that have some potential. Brad Clark, Simon Nemec, and now, Mintyukov, they all signed pretty similar deals, 5 years, buying out one UFA year with a modified no trade clause in the 5th year, and they're all like in that $7 to $7.5 million range. That's what the rate is. So McTavish got traded, Zegras got traded, Drysdale got traded. Leo Carlsson's seen all that's happened. So at this point, Pat Verbeek can try to be all rough and tough and be like, oh, I'll match any offer sheet. Then let's see you match it, because what that's going to do is fuck up your whole salary cap, internal system, because you still, even if you match Leo Carlsson's, you don't have enough money to sign Cutter Gauthier because he's worth a lot more than that. I get it. He's a winger and Carlsson's a center. Carlsson's immensely important to Anaheim because they got rid of McTavish, got rid of Zegras. If they lose Leo Carlsson, they have no center depth. Roger McQueen might come in and turn into something. We don't know about that. But what's going to happen is if Anaheim matches Leo Carlsson's contract, they're going to have a tough time with Gauthier. And then if they sign Gauthier, trying to fill out the roster, they'll have to cut, make some moves. And if they don't match Leo Carlsson, the Ducks are fucked. So either way, Pat Verbeek is screwed. He could be mad, and you could be all pissed at Breer, and all these GMs could be pissed at Daniel Breer for making that move. But you idiots, think about it. It's not like he did something that's illegal. It's part of the fucking CBA. It's a way to improve your team. Instead of being all mad about it, go and sign the player then. And that's the thing. The players, there will be players in the future that perhaps don't want to be where they are, and they don't want to be there long term. Maybe they won't sign when they're RFA and let it go to the point where it's in the summer that it gets past July 1st, and they want to sign an offer sheet with someone else, right? Like, that's going to be something I probably will see with some players happening in the future here. I will not be surprised within the next 2-3 years if you hear about a player that on purpose isn't signing a contract because he knows an offer sheet will get him A, out of the city he's in, and B, out of, with more money into a different situation altogether. And so really the thing is, if a player signs an offer sheet, that's showing he was willing to leave. So if Anaheim matches this, Leo Carlsson, the dynamic might be a little bit different. I don't think the players would care in that sense, but maybe with management it might be different, right? It could be perceived different. Maybe, and let's reverse the roles. If like how Cutter Gauthier got traded, let's say Leo Carlsson left Philly to go to Anaheim, Flyers fans would lose their mind and eat this kid up, right? So it's all going to depend on the situation. But strategically, if you can do it, kind of like what St. Louis did to Edmonton a couple of years ago, Broberg and Holloway are the exact pieces Edmonton needs, and it's worked out so well for St. Louis. You can see a lot of these happen. The Barrett Hayton one was also well done strategically. I get it. Barrett Hayton is not a superstar name. And the other thing is, this does not mean that every offer sheet is going to be for a star player. It's going to be $20 million a year. It's not. Barrett Hayton is a guy for New Jersey who fits them as a third-line center behind Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes. It fits a need for them that they can move Dawson Mercer to the wing, and it makes sense. Whereas for Utah, they traded for Vinny Trocheck. They already have Nick Schmaltz. They have Logan Cooley. They probably don't need Barrett Hayton, but if they match it to keep him around for depth purposes, well, they can't trade him for a year anyways, and then that will walk him right to UFA status. So do you match it now and see him leave in a year for nothing? Or do you just let him go and take the second round pick? It's asset management. What do you want to do? Again, depends on your cycle. If Utah was a Stanley Cup contender that for sure they're going for it, I would see them matching for Hayton. Let's just say it was Colorado Avalanche. Let's say, hypothetically, instead of Barrett Hayton, let's say it was like, I don't know, Nicholas Nazem Kadri, I guess. I don't know. Let's say Nazem Kadri 10 years ago, and he got an offer sheet like that from New Jersey. Colorado will probably match it because they're competing for the cup, and Kadri is an important piece for them. For Utah, they could probably let Hayton go, take that second round pick as draft capital, and do something else with it. There's a lot of different ways this can go, but the thing is, I feel like managers are just idiots and don't understand how to utilize this in terms of a strategic tool, because some teams, if you see a team that's screwed for cap purposes, what's the big deal? Screw them over, especially if let's say it's a division rival. I think the perfect team for this, and actually I don't care for that team at all because the way they do business, Vegas Golden Knights would be a perfect team where if they accumulated some draft picks, if they want to sign an RFA now in the future, that'd be totally what Vegas would do. And it would be on point. Actually, when you think about it, it's surprising that Vegas, they never kept their picks around long enough to do that. But they could probably sign some big RFA, and that actually would have been a brilliant move for them. But at this point, for so many teams, you gotta lock up your player when you have a chance. You might have to overpay a little bit to buy some UFA years, but 3 years the player might leave. It's starting to feel a little bit like the NBA, and then the NBA is another level. The other thing, sorry, before I point out with the offer sheets, the other thing to point out is these no trade clauses. I don't like the idea of a player asking for a no trade clause and then asking for a trade out and then using that clause to block a trade. I personally feel like if you have a no trade clause and you want out, then by default should be some room. Obviously, it's not going to be in the CBA now because they just renegotiated a new one. But basically, if you ask out and you're the one that wants to trade out, you have to get, let's say, 5 teams or 10 teams is probably the ideal, so you can get traded. Now, with that being said, at the same time, why are GMs giving out no trade clauses like they're candy? No trade clauses should be like maybe 2 or 3 players on a team at the most. There's some teams in the league, they're shitty. They should not have any player with any trade protection at all. For the superstars like Draisaitl, McDavid, McKinnon, McCarr, those players, sure. They should all have protection, not a big deal. It makes sense. But some teams have like I think 8, 9 players that have no trade clauses, and they're not even good players. So why the fuck? Because you're trying to dick them around for again a few dollars here and there, and they use a clause as a negotiation tactic. Be smart about it. Like that's the whole thing. Like people need to be smart about it. For some of these teams, you might have to pivot. Tampa Bay has been competitive for years. San Jose actually had done really good for a while, but then Doug Wilson got older and got a little bit crazy and started doing stupid stuff. Eventually, Mike Greer came in, had to clean that mess up, and now San Jose is on the up and up again. Every team, for the most part, goes through a cycle. And you need good management, you need good coaching, and I get it. Not every team has that. There's certain teams that just excel at that, and some teams that are a shit show, and they're going to stay that way. The Vancouver Canucks have been a joke for years. For the first time in I don't know how long, the Canucks actually look like they have a solid management group in place, and perhaps they'll build the right way. The Calgary Flames have kind of done that now. I don't know, some teams like Chicago, like San Jose, looks like they have. I don't know where the Rangers are. I don't think Chris Drury is the right man for that job at all, and I don't think there's too many people that disagree with me for that. So again, there's so many other factors that go into building a team. But again, when it comes to restricted free agency, offer sheets is a very smart way to land a number one center, a top line winger, a top pairing defenseman. Just you plan it accordingly. Every pick is not that valuable. Everybody's all about these picks. When the Flames traded for Nemec a few weeks ago, there was all these people. Oh my gosh, they gave up all these first round picks. The first round picks are in the fucking 20s, dude. It's irrelevant. Yes, could Nemec turn out to be a bust? Sure, but it's worth taking a shot on a guy who's only 3 years into his career, is a number 2 overall pick, and the Flames, they have the cap space and they have a need for that, so why not, right? So there's different things to look at, and again, people need to really open their eyes and understand how things work. Leo Carlsson signed for 18 million. Right away, people are like, "Oh my gosh, that means McDavid's worth 30 million." It's not the same thing. Okay, there's more to it, and understand the rules before you want to comment or make responses to something that you don't understand. Like I get it, some of you are hardcore delusional fans of your team, but in some cases you gotta call a spade a spade. Pat Verbeek is probably the one GM that deserved this opportunity, and I hope Leo Carlsson ends up in Philly. I hope they don't match it, because that will fuck up and then the Ducks rebuild. And I feel bad for Ducks fans, but I feel like Pat Verbeek, being a dick that he's been for the last few years with his negotiation tactics, kind of deserves that. When St. Louis did with Stan Bowman, I thought that was great too. Doug Armstrong, savvy GM, been around. Stan Bowman's an idiot. They didn't see Armstrong do it like Ken Holland when he was there. That's the whole mutual respect thing. Mind you, Ken Holland's a useless GM too. Like, you see the free agency signings he made? That was ridiculous. Anyways, talk to you guys later. Peace.